many people still believe in the conspiracy?
Oh, it's a vast majority, yeah. It's a vast majority. I can't remember the latest polling, but it's very high. And I'm sure after all of I wonder how it's going to be played out for the 50th anniversary, because there's tons of documentaries, there's tons of stuff out. Maybe now that after I made Oswald's Ghost, maybe now like the cool thing will be to debunk the conspiracy theories.
It's 2013. We have the internet. And on the one hand, there's this great vehicle there to disseminate information, but at the same time, disinformation has just as much currency, it seems. Do you think that that's a big part of the problem?
Yes, it is. The only bright spot in this is that younger people who have grown up with the internet as the source of information. I know this. I've got 2 kids in school, and they get assignments to do research for different papers on different subjects, and they have to go on the internet and find things. And one of the key things they're taught to do is how to filter out true information from false information, to weigh things based on their scientific validity or historical validity. So they're plunged into a world that's very different from where I grew up, where you could just go to the encyclopedia and that would, be some authoritative source, or there was like the lead news anchor of the day, that would be your authoritative source, or, there were, you go to the library. So I think they're very savvy. They've got a very big, very attuned bullshit detector. So I try to have faith that younger people are actually more capable than people of my generation in figuring out what's true and what's not true on the internet, or what's to be believed and what isn't. I think they take everything with a grain of salt.
Just in broad terms, what is it, do you think, that makes the JFK conspiracy theories so attractive to people to embrace?
I think it's very difficult for people to get their head around the idea that something so cataclysmic could happen without a reason to it. So they conjure up a reason that's as grand as the cataclysm. So the conspiracy has to match the magnitude of the impact of JFK's death on us all. The idea that, that creates a sort of a balance, an equilibrium in the universe, whereas the idea that some lone nut could just pop the president in the head and kill him and alter the course of history for no apparent reason is very uncomfortable to people. I mean, it reminds me, I once asked an audience about this, how comfortable they were that things in life happen just randomly for no reason. And the same people and the same number of people in the audience who said that they're uncomfortable with that idea were the ones who also believe in a conspiracy. That's interesting. It's almost like a religious thing,
The way conspiracy theorists reprocess information to support their theory. The whole thing about the Zapruder footage and the difference between an exit wound and an entry wound, it's people just sort of see that front of the head exploding and automatically say, well, that's obviously someone shooting from the front, when in fact it's evidence of the opposite.
Exactly right. Yeah, but they're told that. People will respond to what they're told. How many people have any training in ballistics, and what happens to a head when it's hit with it? How many people know any of that? Like 10 people in Australia, perhaps, who all work for the police. So people will respond to what they're told that actually means. And if they want to believe a conspiracy theorist who's saying that it's this, then they'll believe that. People believe what they want to believe.
What impact do you think the Oliver Stone film had in promoting and prolonging the myth?
I think it raised people's consciousness about it again. I think it was sort of starting to fade away as ancient history, and it just really almost introduced the whole thing to a whole new generation of people around the world. And it just goes on. It amazes me just how it goes on. Maybe the 50th anniversary is the last gasp, because the next anniversary, there's not going to be too many people alive who actually remember it happening.
I was going to ask you, how long do you think it'll be before, common sense prevails, before people actually recognize and realize that all all the evidence says the same thing, that it was one guy. How long before common sense will prevail, do you think, Robert?
There's always money in conspiracy theories, so things, there's money in this, and so people will make money off television shows and books and stuff because there's a market for it. It's a great story. It's a wonderful. The conspiracy theories, I love them. They're fantastic. They're like these great murder mysteries. So it's just a wonderful story, and it's legendary. This, Camelot, and this great young president, his beautiful bride, on a bright sunny day in Dallas, and all was right in the world, and the sun shone on the United States, and we were all happy, and we were sending guys into space. It was a great era. It's just it's so rich. It's so rich. Nobody wants to give up that dream and think, this guy in a stained T-shirt just shot the president.
Why do you think no one of a similar profile has made a debunking film pointing out just how ludicrous the conspiracy theories are?
Yeah, I think there actually would be a great feature film to be made about Lee Harvey Oswald. I really do. The true story of Lee Harvey Oswald. But would it be as much of a blockbuster as this other dramatic story? I don't know. People want myths. It's so distant now in terms of actual history. It almost doesn't matter to most people now, like whether it's true or it's not, because it doesn't impact their lives. Whether there was a conspiracy or not to kill Kennedy at this point in time, anybody associated with it is dead. So it's just sort of a fun, mental game to play. And clearly, the more fun mental game to play for most people is the conspiracy. To me, I find it intellectually stimulating to actually think about Oswald as this kind of lone nut who did this because I'm sort of drawn to randomness and the gray areas of life. That appeals to me, but I'm not a mainstream kind of person.
Why did you make Oswald's Ghost?
I think from a very similar motivation to what interests you about the whole thing. I just was fascinated that this conspiracy theory or these conspiracy theories are so deeply rooted in our culture, and particularly in that generation that came of age in the 1960s, that if you really trace it back, like what was driving so much of the, mistrust of authority and the disgust with mainstream culture and all of this, the shock of Kennedy's assassination and the seeming lack of resolution to it, and the fact that it may have been a conspiracy and that the conspiracy was covered up by the highest levels of the government. That is the root of so much of the rise of the counterculture. I think it's a really key thing. There are other things, of course, the threat of nuclear war being one. There's other things, but the Kennedy assassination is a key thing. So I made this movie it's less about the assassination itself than it is about how those theories reverberated through our culture in the 2 decades following the assassination. And even up to the present day. And similarly to how he did Pandora's Promise, the hook of the film was to follow, there's certain people in the film who undergo a complete transformation on this. The key person being Norman Mailer, whose entire career revolved in many, many ways in his writing around this concept that there was a conspiracy to kill JFK. It was like front and center in his thinking and his view of how the world operates. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, he worked with a journalist named Larry Schiller, and they got access to, they were the first people to get access to the KGB archives on Oswald, because Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union for a while. And they thought, okay, this is going to be key to blow this whole thing up and really find out what happened. And they researched. I think he spent 6 years writing this book. And at the end of it, he came out completely the other way. And he looked at all the evidence. He said, you know what? I just can't see any evidence of the conspiracy. What I see is this guy, Oswald. He got such personal information because the KGB was bugging his apartment. They had taped recordings of him making love to his wife or failing to make love to his wife and really intimate stuff. And Mailer came to really know Oswald. And he wrote this amazing book called Oswald's Tale. And he said, you know what? This guy just went and did it. He just went and did it. And I don't see any evidence that he was pushed to do it or cajoled to do it or worked with anybody else. And it was a shocking turnaround for him. but it was an amazing story, and that's got the heart and soul of the film.
It is beautifully captured in the film, as is some of the lunacy involved in supporting the conspiracy theory. The best bit, and it's quite funny, the whole thing about the code, about the numbers, and about, well, if you look at it this way and they turn that way, and then that's that, and that's Ruby's thing, and if you transpose it, blah, blah, it was kind of insane. But they were dead serious.
With deductive reasoning, you find something, you find a telephone number, and then you work backwards from there. And you can, if you pull the threads of any kind of evidence from back to some preordained conclusion you want to have, you can kind of do it just by reverse reasoning. But what Garrison was doing was it's hard to even believe that Garrison himself believed this stuff. It was just so loopy.